I've been diving for about 10 years. I've seen sunken ships, underwater caves, stingrays with wingspans wider than a truck. But the day I stood in front of the U-352 model at the museum, I realized I'd missed something big. I'm not the kind of guy who chases records or glory dives. I dive because it's quiet down there. Because every second underwater brings me closer to something honest, something real. Over the last 10 years, I've seen my share, wrecked barges off Florida, blue caverns in the Bahamas. But nothing prepared me for a moment in a small town called Pine Knoll Shores, North Carolina. It was just supposed to be a Sunday detour. I was heading home after a short dive trip with some friends, and I figured I'd stretch my legs at the North Carolina Aquarium. Admission, a few fish tanks, a school group or two. Nothing special. I wasn't expecting anything more than a cup of vending machine coffee and a break from driving. Then I turned a corner in the main exhibit hall and stopped cold. There she was, U-352, a near life-size model of the German U-boat. Cold gray steel, sleek hull, rising conning tower, torpedo tubes, the periscope like a spear aimed at history. There was a placard off to the side that read, U-352, German type WWII submarine. Sunk May 9, 1942, by U.S. Coast Guard cutter Icarus. Discovered in 1975 by diver George Purifoy. Lies at a depth of 115 feet, roughly 26 miles off the coast of Beaufort, North Carolina. Dive accessible for certified divers. I'd heard of the U-352 before. Stories on forums, mentions during training. But standing in front of her replica, something shifted. Something in the angles, the silence around her. It didn't feel like a display. It felt like a presence. I moved closer. The lighting was dim, but you could still make out every detail. Rivets, rust stains painted into the surface, the worn insignia on the tower. I stared at that shape, that long body shaped for stealth and death, and I felt it in my gut, like something had reached out and grabbed me by the collar. It was like she was looking back at me. Behind the glass, a tablet played black and white footage, depth charges exploding, prisoners in German uniforms lined up on a U.S. cutter, one staring blankly into the lens. I stood there, gripping the railing like it was the real deck. And then it hit me. I'd spent a decade diving around this very coast. These waters were mine, and I'd never even thought to look for her. That was the moment it changed. Something inside whispered, what if she's been waiting for you? Back in the car, the museum fading in my rear view, I didn't start the engine. I just pulled out my phone and typed, U-352 dive North Carolina. There were dozens of results. Dive charters, forums, photos, videos. She'd been down there this whole time. And now I was going. I've done thousands of dives. But this was the first time the water actually called to me. I woke up early the next morning. Way earlier than usual. The windows were still dark, the neighborhood asleep, but I was already wide awake, staring at the ceiling with my mind running laps. I couldn't shake the image of the U-352 model. Something about it had followed me home, like it was still there, waiting just behind my eyes. I got up, brewed coffee, and sat at my laptop. That's when I started really digging. U-352, German type, WWII U-boat. Built in Flensburg in May of 1940. Crew of 45. A weapon of war, one of hundreds just like her, sent to cripple Allied shipping across the Atlantic. But this one didn't last long. Her first, and only, combat patrol happened in the spring of 1942. She was captained by a young officer named Helmut Rathke, just 30 years old, known for being sharp, proud, and aggressive. He made a mistake. On May 9th, they tried to ambush the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Icarus off the coast of North Carolina. Missed their shot. Icarus responded hard, depth charges, fast and precise. Within minutes, the sub was taking on water. 15 men didn't make it out. 33 were captured and taken to a POW camp in Charleston, South Carolina. I sat there reading, long after the coffee had gone cold. Page after page. Reports, interviews, dive logs. What caught me off guard wasn't the combat, the tactics, or the loss. It was the stillness that followed. The idea that U-352 had stayed there, untouched, for decades, resting, quiet, unseen, like a sealed time capsule at the bottom of the sea. I picked up my phone and called my dive partner, Mark. You're not gonna believe what I just found, I said. You already in the water, man? He chuckled, still groggy. Close. You remember U-352? The U-boat off the coast here? I want her. I want to dive it. There was a pause on the other end. You serious? Dead serious. That weekend, Mark drove down. We got to work immediately. First thing, gear check. For a deep wreck dive like this, everything needs to be perfect. I pulled out my Aqualung Legend Reg, took it apart, cleaned it down to the O-rings, reassembled it from muscle memory. Checked my BCD, reweighed my trim pockets, swapped my dive computer battery. I wasn't about to risk anything, not here. Mark did the same. He brought his Shearwater Perdix. We synced dive logs, cross-checked backups, ran drills. We weren't just diving. We were getting ready for something sacred. Then came the logistics. We called around, eventually landing on 2 local outfits with experience on U-352, Olympus Dive Center and Discovery diving out of Morehead City. Both had permits, experienced crews, and ran charters out to the wreck regularly. I called Olympus first. 115 feet to the sand, limited overhead, strong potential for current. Visibility can hit 50 feet on a good day. This is a certified war grave, sir. We don't take that lightly. I told him we were both advanced open water, with over 50 log dives below 80 feet. There was a beat of silence on the line, and then you're good to go. But remember, this is not your average dive site. You treat her with respect. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. That part one understood. That night, Mark and I sat out on my back porch. The stars above us, our gear spread out in neat rows. We drank black coffee and went through the checklist like soldiers packing for deployment. We both knew it, though neither of us said it out loud. This wasn't just a dive. I felt it in my gut, like a slow pull under my ribs. It was more than history, more than curiosity. U-352 was a tomb, a memory sealed in steel. And part of me wasn't sure I had the right to be there. And yet, I could not go. At one of our pre-dive briefings, an old instructor with a weathered face and hands like driftwood looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Diving's not about how deep you go. It's about why you come back different." He knew something I didn't, but I was about to find out. When you're sitting on the edge of the boat, gear strapped tight, that hum in your ears pounding like a war drum, what you've really got is breath and silence. And then, just water. We got lucky with the weather. Sort of. The Atlantic doesn't do calm in spring. That morning was cloudy. The sky hung low and gray like wet canvas. Wind whipped across the surface, tossing spray off the sides of the boat. But the captain looked up, sniffed the air, and gave us the green light. You've got a 6-hour window. If you're going, it's now. We were 26 miles off the coast of Beaufort. The water was steel-colored and angry, rolling in slow, heavy swells. I sat on the stern bench, wetsuit zipped, twin tanks strapped, mask fogged with breath. My hands moved automatically, checking regs, inflator hose, clips, wrist computer, knife, backup light, all second nature. But inside, I wasn't as calm as I looked. Mark sat next to me. Usually he cracked jokes, lightened the mood. But not this time. He was locked in, focused. We both knew we were heading toward something different. Not just a dive. The dive master came over, voice steady, holding a clipboard. Here's the plan. Descent along the anchor line. Max depth around 115 feet. Bottom time limited to 20 minutes. Visibility today's solid, 40, maybe 50 feet. But listen to me closely, do not go inside. This is a war grave. Whatever's down there stays there. We nodded. No questions. No debate. When the engine cut out, everything got real quiet. A buoy bobbed just ahead, the anchor line running straight down into the blue. Somewhere beneath it, U-352. Resting. Waiting. I clipped my mask, pulled my hood tight, and looked at Mark. He nodded. See you down there. I stepped off the stern and into the Atlantic. The cold hit me first. 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Enough to wake you up, but not steal your breath. The moment my body was under, the world above vanished. No voices. No engines. Just me and the slow hiss of air in my ears. We dropped along the line, hand over hand, bubbles trailing upward like silver threads. Every few feet, the pressure deepened, the light dimmed. The surface faded. Time thinned. And then, there she was. At around 90 feet, a shape started to form. Not fast. Not dramatic. It came like a ghost walking through fog. Steel. Long, sleek, torn. Her hull sloped at an angle. Maybe 20 degrees, resting awkwardly on her starboard side, like she'd crashed into sleep. The conning tower jutted upward like a broken tooth. Coral and rust painted her skin. Fish darted around her ribs like birds inside a cathedral. She was still. U-352. I hovered just above, heart racing. This wasn't a wreck. This wasn't scrap metal. This was presence. The silence down there didn't feel empty. It felt full, as if the very water was holding its breath. I reached out, slow and deliberate, and touched the steel. Even through my gloves, I felt it, cold, gritty, but real. The surface was dented, peppered with impact marks, one of which likely came from the depth charges that had sent her down. Right then, a fish shot past me, fast and sudden, some kind of striped sea bass. I jumped slightly, instincts kicking in, and then exhaled a laugh into my retch. I turned and saw Mark floating a few feet away. He gave me the okay sign, and I returned it. Together, we started a slow circuit around the sub. The conning tower was largely intact. The periscope still jutted skyward, bent, but unmistakable. One of the hatches was sealed shut. No surprise. Along the starboard side, I saw what looked like blast damage. Bent steel, torn plating, dark streaks like burned ink. That's when I saw the breach. A hole, maybe 4 feet across, just beneath the tower. Jagged, twisted, pitch black inside. I drifted toward it. My light cut through the opening, catching flashes of movement. Tiny fish, debris, something glinting deeper in. The inside looked tight, claustrophobic, choked with rust and shadow. I stared at it for a long time. Everything else faded. I knew the rules. I knew the warnings. But something in me stirred. That breach wasn't just an opening, it was an invitation. Mark stayed outside. He didn't try to stop me. He just waited. Like he knew there was no point in arguing with someone who's already halfway gone. I gave one final look toward the surface, took a slow breath, and moved forward. Into the dark. I don't know what made me go in. I just did. Slipping into the breach felt like crawling backwards into time. The edges of the torn metal stuck out like teeth, covered in soft algae and brittle rust. I moved slow, arms tight, protecting my regulator and hoses. And then, just like that, I was inside. It was darker in there. Heavier. The water was thick, not in a literal sense, but in presence. My dive light sliced the dark like a blade through velvet, revealing flashes of the forgotten. I was in a corridor, or what was left of one. Crushed pipes overhead, snapped conduits hanging like wet ropes. Everything was brown, red, soft with age and salt. A thin cloud of silt drifted through the beam of my light, stirred by my movement. There was no sound. I drifted past a faded sign stenciled in German, Luftwinkel geschlossen halten. Keeper valve closed. I reached out and brushed my glove across it. The lettering was nearly gone, but still whispered authority. The light caught a rusted spoon sitting in what must have once been a crew bunk shelf. Nearby, a tin cup rested on its side, fossilized by corrosion and time. I picked it up, gently. On the bottom, scratched deep into the metal, were initials, HR. Could have been Helmut Rathke. Could have been someone else. Didn't matter. It was human. I set the cup back down carefully, like placing a memory back where it belonged. Further in, I found what was left of the radio room. Collapsed partially, metal folding over itself like crumpled paper. Wires floated loose, jellyfish thin, tangled like veins. And there, on a rusted shelf, I saw a headset. I reached for it slowly, as if expecting it to flinch. The plastic was cracked, metal wiring exposed. And on the inside of the earpiece, faint but there, were the letters KW. I held it closer. Wondered who that was. Wondered what he'd last heard through this very piece of gear. And that's when it happened. I didn't hear a sound. Not really. But something inside my chest pulsed, hard, and then clear as anything I've ever felt. A voice whispered inside me, Tauchen. Dive. It wasn't a word I heard with my ears. It was memory passed through steel. Something the ship had carried for over 80 years, waiting for someone to receive it. I froze. My breathing slowed. My heartbeat pounded once, twice. Then calmed. I put the headset back down, touched the shelf, and gave a small nod. I wasn't alone in there. Not really. Even if the men were gone, their stories still echoed off the walls. Further down, I found a mirror. Just a fragment, still fixed to the bulkhead, barely reflective through the filmy silt. I floated closer, stared into it. For a second, I saw myself, mask, wide eyes, light behind me. And for just the briefest moment, something else. A shadow. A flicker. Behind my shoulder. I turned quickly. Nothing. Just rust and water. I hovered in place, processing. Beneath the mirror, bolted into the wall, was a single coat hook. On it hung a scrap of cloth, barely a strip now, but it had once been navy blue. Uniform? Blanket? I didn't know. I didn't need to know. I stayed there, motionless. A guest. An intruder. An echo. Something told me. No further. It wasn't fear. It was respect. I turned slowly, navigating back through the collapsed hall, careful not to brush the walls. This place had earned its peace. It didn't need my disruption. When I saw the light from the opening again, it hit me harder than I expected. The way sunlight filters through silt, it looked like a halo. Mark was still outside, floating steady, watching the breach, waiting. He didn't ask anything. He didn't have to. I emerged slowly, and together we drifted back, side by side, to the main body of the wreck. I reached out once more, hand on the hull, not to explore, not to search, just to say, thank you. And then we turned away, toward the line, toward the surface, toward the world above. I surfaced, but part of me stayed down there, between the silt, the silence, and the echo of something that never left. We made our ascent slowly, just like we were taught, step by step, stopping for decompression, letting our bodies catch up to the surface. But for me, the harder part wasn't physical. It wasn't nitrogen or time or pressure. It was leaving her. Leaving that space behind, the quiet corridors, the echoing stillness, the moments that didn't belong to me but still let me witness them. When we broke through the surface, the sky was still overcast. The Atlantic stretched gray and heavy around us. The boat was waiting, steady as ever. The crew helped haul us on board. The wind cut through my suit, but I barely noticed. I sat on the bench, gear half-stripped, looking out at the waves. I didn't talk. I didn't want to. Mark didn't say much either. He gave me a look, one of those glances that only diving partners understand. It said everything. Yeah, I felt it too. Another diver on the boat, a younger guy with a GoPro clipped to his mask, asked, "So, you guys go inside?" I looked at him, paused, and just shook my head more to myself than to him. What would I even say? That I'd touched a headset still humming with memory? That I'd seen a reflection that wasn't mine? That I'd heard a voice that belonged to 80 years ago? No, that wasn't for sharing. Not yet. That evening, back on shore, I sat by the dock with a thermos of coffee and a pen in my hand. My dive log lay open on my knee, blank page waiting. I looked at it for a long time before writing anything. Then, I slowly scribbled, U-352. Quiet. Still alive in her own way. I didn't fill in the rest, no depth, no water temp, no bottom time. Just that one sentence. I drew a small circle beside it. Not because it meant zero, but because it felt like a loop. A sealed story. The next day, I walked the shoreline while the sun was still low. The town was waking up, families in RVs, locals in sweatshirts walking dogs, kids riding bikes along the marina. Everything was so normal, so surface level. But I wasn't quite back yet. I felt heavier, not in a bad way, in a quiet way, like I was carrying something that didn't weigh down my body, but pressed gently against my thoughts. And it wasn't guilt. It wasn't grief. It was something else, like reverence. I didn't take anything from the wreck. Not a single object. Not a photo. Not even a rock. But she left something in me. A presence. A silence I still heard. That night, I found myself lying in bed, thinking back to that moment with the mirror. The flicker in the reflection. The shadow that might have been a memory, or might have just been my own fear surfacing in a new shape. And I realized, U-352 didn't just give me a dive. She gave me something I couldn't log or explain. She gave me a new way of seeing the water. Since then, every time I check my O-ring, click in a tank, or clear my mask, it's there, that feeling, that awareness. Like I'm not just descending into pressure and depth anymore. I'm descending into memory. I'm not diving for fish or wrecks or even challenge. I'm diving to listen, to hear what the ocean still remembers, when we take the time to be quiet enough to hear it. You don't just dive into water. You dive into the past. And if you're still enough, it calls you. A few weeks passed. I was back home, back in routine, work, workouts, occasional boat dives. The world kept moving. But every time I sank beneath the surface, even in a pool, I still felt her. U-352. Like a breath still lingering in my regulator. It wasn't trauma. It wasn't obsession. It was presence. Like part of my brain had been rewired to always hold space for her. Like she had made a quiet home somewhere behind my ribs. Some nights I'd open my dive log, run my fingers over that one sentence. U-352. Quiet. Still alive in her own way. And that's when it started. Not a craving. A pull. I wandered into the local dive shop one Saturday. Just looking. Maybe to be around gear. Maybe to breathe neoprene and remember something silent. And that's when I saw it. A weathered copy of a book on the shelf. I knew the title even before I picked it up. Shadow Divers, Robert Curson. The story of another submarine. U-869. Same type as U-352, type VIC. But the mystery around her was bigger, deeper, and darker. For decades, the world thought U-869 was lost off the coast of North Africa. But in 1991, a pair of American tech divers, John Chatterton and Richie Kohler, found her off the coast of New Jersey, at a depth of about 230 feet. Wrong ocean. Wrong side of the world. No one knew how she ended up there. They dove it again and again, risking everything to uncover her truth. One of them nearly died. Another diver did die. And still, they kept going. Because U-869 wasn't just a wreck. She was withholding. I read the book in 2 days. It crawled under my skin. Because the feeling was familiar. That voice, that pull, that whisper from below. And I knew. I had to go. I started researching. Maps. Historical documents. Dive profiles. Temperature, current patterns, visibility. U-869 lay deeper than anything I'd attempted. 230 feet meant technical diving. It meant trimix gas, deco stops, redundant systems, planning for minutes like they were hours. She wasn't just deeper in the ocean. She was deeper in meaning. I emailed a dive operation in Jersey, told them about my certifications, my log dives, my experience on U-352. I kept it short. Next day, I got a reply. If you've been to U-352, then you already know how to listen. Maybe you're ready to hear what this one has to say. I sat there for a long time, just staring at that message. And I realized, U-352 wasn't the end of anything. She was the beginning. Some divers look for treasure. Some look for thrills. Me? I look for what the ocean remembers. Because sometimes, if you're quiet enough, it talks back. It doesn't scream. It doesn't shout. It just waits. Like U-869 is waiting now. And when I open my logbook again, I know what the next line will read. U-869. Lost. Silent. Calling.